Hi there, in this video tutorial I'll be showing you how to curate a terrain for CryEngine. Um, the main tools that I'll be using will be um, Maya, Mudbox, and World Machine. So earlier, 2 days ago, I posted my work on Polycount and crymod.net, and a lot of people asked me how did you do to achieve these kind of effects or this kind of rendering for a terrain. How do you do to make them look consistent? So in this tutorial, I'll show you the tricks of how to make a natural looking terrain, because it's not very easy to paint these manually just by hand. You'll have to use third-party tools such as World Machine, where you'll have to render a view texture maps that will help you get those nice erosion flows and give you some nice lightning effects and some nice color maps as well. So let's get started. First of all you have to do is use any kind of 3D package just to create a plane. So the plane will be a basic plane of the size of 512 by 512 units. That's 512 by 512 units. Maya, you need to keep in mind that Maya is set up in centimeters, so if you didn't do so, you can do it by just going to Window, Settings, and Preferences. Then go to Settings again and switch this to centimeters. Save your settings when you're done. Alright. Now all you have to do is just create a grid. Change the settings to 512 and width and the height 512. Add some subdivisions to it. That way when you start subdividing the plane into Mudbox, you'll have a consistent poly count. So in this case it's going to be 8 by 8. That way if I subdivide it, it's going to be 64 by 64 and vice versa. Then all you have to do is center your grid at the origin, center your plane at the origin of the grid. So all you need to do is just turn on snapping and move the grid at the center. Alright. I guess we're done with Maya. All we have to do now is export this plane to Mudbox. So export as an object file, obj. I'm gonna export this to a folder which is in on my desk. Mesh, terrain plane mesh. Alright, replace. We're done, we can close Maya. Now all we have to do is open up Mudbox. In my case I'm using Mudbox 2012, but any version would do, since all we're going to do here in Mudbox is just paint some basic shapes for the terrain. So go to File, Import, and import your terrain plane which you exported from Maya. Alright, we got our plane here. Change the FOV of your camera. It's always good to change it because in the default value is 27, 96. In game engines usually they use an field of view of 60 degrees or 50 degrees depending on which kind of game you're playing. I mean, it changes depending if you're playing a car game, or let's say a third-person adventure game, or a first-person shooter. But in my case I'm going to use a 50 degree FOV. That way I can have a good sense of scale and some nice perspective. Alright, what we're going to do here is just paint some basic heights for our terrain. So you need to keep in mind that you'll have to constrain your brush to paint heights in the y-axis only. That way you won't have any surprises when you render out your height map in Mudbox. Height map or displacement map. So the default value is average normal in your brush settings. In the advanced tab, you just switch this to the y-axis. So it will paint heights only vertically. Alright, I'm gonna start painting some basic stuff. Let's say we have some sort of mountains here, cliffs and stuff, and we want to have a sea like going all around here. So it's gonna be the shore. I'm gonna have some sort of beach here, so it's good to plan what kind of terrain or what kind of level we're going to work on. Alright. Put this down a bit. Yeah, I'm trying to take the I'm trying to take the point of view of a player inside the game engine itself, and I'm trying to imagine the scene itself first. So this is where the water is gonna be, so obviously it needs to be at a lower level. Alright, let's subdivide this one more time. Just press Shift D. Oh, one thing before I subdivide, you need to go to Mesh, and you go to the option of the subdivisions. Click here, and this activates smooth positions first at early subdivisions. That way you won't get rounded edges. But I think in Modbox, since it's smart enough to guess if it's a plane or not, I think it should work without turning off smooth positions. Let's see. There you go. Yep. You don't even need to turn it off. Okay. Let's keep on adding some some detail here. It all depends what kind of terrain you want. You know, it depends if you're working on a canyon or grassy plains or cliffs with an important angle, slope angle. Yeah, in this case I'm gonna be working on a very simple terrain. It's not gonna be very high res, just for the sake of the tutorial, because I don't want to spend 8 hours rendering all the texture maps, because we're gonna be rendering a bunch of texture maps. We're gonna be rendering ambient occlusion, cavity maps, edge highlight map, which is something that I kind of discovered just by playing around with the options in Modbox. You can just render out, you can highlight the edges of the mesh on a high poly mesh. What else we could render? A normal map. We're gonna render also a bunch of texture maps in World Machine as well, which will take a bunch of time to render. And it all depends on the output of the texture resolution. Or actually, let me reformulate that, on the resolution of the texture output. So we'll be working, I think, we're gonna work on a 2048 by 2048 texture map. So it's gonna be a height map of, for the engine itself, it's gonna be a 1024 by 1024. But I think I'll start explaining that later when I get to that point. It's better, because right now we need to concentrate on painting the basic shapes. What else we could do? Yeah, let's lower a bit these parts over here. Make some sort of small island. Okay, another subdivision. subdivide this again. And another subdivision. So since we're gonna be working on a 2048 by 2048 texture, we're gonna have to go up to 2 million. Let's see how much. Let's calculate how much 2048 is by 2048. Okay, so it's gonna be around 4 million polygons terrain in Modbox to have an optimal terrain resolution, to grasp all the fine detail optimally from your high poly mesh. I mean, that'll be 4 million, and I think in just another 3 or 4 subdivisions I'll reach that count. But if you go like over 4 million, you'll get to up to 16 million. And if you're planning to render texture maps at 2048 by 2048, it won't be productive. All the detail will be lost anyways, and it won't be enough. You won't have enough texture resolution to show off all the details that's in the mesh that has 16 million polygons. So if you're working on a mesh that has 16 million polygons, you'll have to work on a texture that has, let's say 4K texture. It's a 4096 by 4096 to benefit fully from all the detail from the high poly mesh. Let's move it out a bit. Let's see. I think we can start going up to the 4 million triangles polygon. Let's subdivide a few times. Maybe at 1 million we should add some big details again. Let's just use scrap brush this time. It's nice for making some terrace effects, the ones that you can find on the canyons. Let's see. Yeah, first of all you need to constrain it to the y-axis as well. Yeah, here it's set up to average normal y-axis. It's gonna pay differently, obviously. I'm using a stamp, and this is the stamp I'm using. I'm just setting up. I check the randomize box, that way I can get some random effects. Then I can start painting off some nice stuff here. Can already turn off the wireframe view. There it is. There you go. It's really some basic noise. pattern of the stem for sake. There we go. Since we're just working on some basic shapes for the moment. Let's see the fall off real quick. And the stamping needs to be fixed to 1, I guess. Okay. It's already starting to look interesting. Let's use some randomized stamping as well here. See how it looks. It could look nice with some interesting effects. It's nice to experiment with different brushes in Mudbox. You'll always discover some new effects, and when you combine different stampings and stencils, obviously we don't want to spend too much time on Mudbox because we still got a lot of work to do in Will Machine and later on in Photoshop when we render all the texture maps. Alright, let's go up another subdivision. I guess this is the last one. Shift D. Let's use the scrap brush a bit more. See if we can add some interesting stuff here and there. This time let's add a randomized stamp. strong here. Alright. I think this should do fine for a simple terrain just for the sake of a tutorial. Obviously we can like spend a bit more time on it and make it look really nice, but with World Machine it's gonna add a lot more detail and maybe remove some of it and add some of it actually. Okay, so what we need to do now is extract the height map, and then later on we're gonna break it into World Machine. So the height map is gonna be at a resolution of 2048. So first of all you gotta do is just import the same plane that you imported earlier. Alright, so this is the plane. I'm gonna rename this into terrain LP, which stands for low poly, and then the mesh which I worked on here in Mudbox, I'll rename it to terrain HP for high poly. Okay, now I can go to maps, extract texture maps, new operation, check the box displacement map, then select your target model, which is the low resolution mesh, so it's the terrain LP, add selected. Now go to source models. Source model is the high poly mesh, which is our terrain HP. Okay, now scroll down. Now do a best guess just to check the rain. Okay, need to keep this as ray casting further outside. Alright, we're gonna quickly do render test just to see if there aren't any problems first. So we're gonna do one at 1212 by 512. Turn off anti-aliasing, normalize search distance. Alright, now we're gonna go to the folder where I'll be working on for this tutorial, which is on my desk, terrain, and create a new folder, call it textures. Okay, so terrain, I'll name it terrain tut 01 height map. We'll save it as a TEF file in 16-bit. That's very important. You need to save it as a 16-bit, otherwise you're gonna have some problems when you import your terrain into World Machine or inside a game engine. Save. Let's try out to render the map. Now all you gotta do is just extract and wait for it to render. Let's just hope it doesn't take too long. Now Mudbox actually does a great job at rendering normal maps, ambient occlusion maps, and displacement map, and as you can see, really fast. Alright, there we go. Okay, we can obviously see here that there's a problem here directly inside inside Mudbox, but we can still check out how it looks in Photoshop. So all we need to do, there we go. We can see that there's a problem here. It's clamped. So what we need to do is change some values here in the extraction. So the search distance is at 51.2. So this at this distances here is 51.2. So we need to use a bigger value. Let's say 100, just for a test. Extract again. Okay, there we go. We can see that it took the whole terrain in, and I think it should be a good base to work on um, inside World Machine. So all we need to do now is export a high resolution one. This will obviously take a bit more time to render. So it's going to be 2048 by 2048. 16-bit previous bump up. I'm going to disable that because every time when I have this box checked, it needs to apply the displacement map onto the high poly, and it does take some time. So extract. So I was saying, yeah, that Modbox renders, extracts texture maps really nicely and very in a clean way. I had experience with Maya. Maya is nice for hard surface modeling extractions. Um, XNormal is pretty good, but not as clean and not as fast as Modbox. All right. Let's check out this texture map we got here. So it should be terrain tut. There you go. Textures. I'm gonna delete this old file that I won't need anymore. I can open this up in Photoshop. I'm just gonna use CS4. CS3 is got a bit of problems, some conflicts with CryEngine plugins. Alright, let's open this up. Okay, I don't see any problems with the texture map. Seems clean to me, and we can already start working on Word Machine. So let's get started. Ooh, it's not responding properly. Guess I'm gonna have to force close it. There we go. Now open up Word Machine. So World Machine, where can you get it? Okay, so there is a basic version that is free of charge that you can get from their website. Let's see, their website is worldmachine.com. So you can get a basic version from their website. So you'll have some limitations, like in any softwares that's provided for the community and as a shareware, obviously. Let's see, what kind of limitations can we get? Basic edition. There you go. It's over here. So you got a maximum resolution output for a basic edition is limited to 513 by 513 pixels. So that's the maximum output you can get from World Machine when you export a height map or a texture map. So it's going to be fairly limited for next-gen engines. But if you're working, let's say you're working on projects for a mobile platform, a 512 by 512 textures will be more than enough, in my opinion. And obviously you cannot use it commercially. So in my case, I'll be using the professional version, and I won't have that texture limitation. So I won't have any problem exporting a 2048 by 2048 texture. Let's make a new project. Let's delete all these nodes. That way we can start on a clean canvas. All right. So I need to keep in mind that World Machine is a node-based software. So each node has a specific function, and it could be an effect, mathematical function as well. You know, you got filters, clamp, invert filters. You got lots of stuff, and I suggest you try it out. If you've already worked with Maya, you probably have seen the material editor in Maya, or if you've worked on UDK, you're probably familiar as well with the material editor, and it's the same kind of system that you're going to be using here. So it's fairly easy to use and fairly accessible. Let's see. Now, first of all, what we need to do is bring in our height map. So it's gonna bring a file input node. It's in the generator tab. You double click on it, nodes, and you click on load. Go to our terrain textures, terrain TUT01 height map. Open it up. There we go. You can see the height map imported inside World Machine. Okay. So we need to set up the texture resolution at which World Machine is going to render at. So in this case, right now, it's set up to 513 by 513 pixels. Since we're working on 2048 by 2048, we're gonna have to use a custom resolution. So uncheck the +1, and it's gonna turn into 2048 by 2048 texture. Check the conserve memory. That way you can save some memory usage when you're rendering the whole terrains. Because sometimes when you're working on very high resolution, let's say 8K by 8K, you're gonna be using, without checking this box, you're gonna be using over 2 gigs of memory. This is a lot, and I guess your system is not gonna have those all that memory just for World Machine. And it all depends on the complexity of your network, your nodes network over here, and the effects that you're using. So just check this box and it'll save you some trouble in the future. So first of all, for previewing and while working on World Machine, you know, every time when you do some changes, you have to re-render the terrain and have it calculate the erosions and different effects. I'd rather work with 512 by 512 is fine. And then when you like the effects, you can render the final output just like we did in Modbox at the full resolution and the full quality. So let's try it out. You got this big button here, the green one, which is bold, and it will build a terrain. There we go. This is a 512 by 512. That's at a resolution of, you basically got about 260K polygons showing off here. Okay. Now what we're gonna do now is add some erosion effects. The erosion effects are the ones that you can see here. I mean, these flows here that you can see, that makes your terrain look natural. So we're gonna start adding those in World Machine right now. Now all you gotta do is go to favorite and click on erosion nodes, and that's it. Just right click, that way you can exit the erosion creation node. Then what you gotta do later on is just link your height field, your height map, to the erosion effect. Alright? And once I click on the erosion node, I do a log preview and do a build, we're gonna see some erosion already painted. Okay, this resolution you won't really see it. If you wanna increase the resolution to 1K, you'll probably see some better effects. Okay, you can already start seeing some detail being added to the terrain, but the detail is not really tweaked yet. So what we can start doing right now is tweaking the details. You know, you can start, when you double click in the erosion node, you get a bunch of options here that you can tweak. So let's see, we got a bunch of presets as well. You know, you can try them out and see what kind of effects you can get. You know, just build again every time you Want to see the final result? You can see you get some nice results already. Obviously, if you wanna, yeah, if you wanna make it look nice as well, you can already start adding a macro. A macro is a tool as well. You know, it's some sort of it's an effect itself, which encompasses other effects. So in my case, I'm going to use a coastal overlay. So it's a basic coverage. It generates color texture for the terrain based on the slope angle of the terrain and the heights. So you can, once you double click on that tool, you can just see a bunch of options which you can tweak. We click on loads, and there we go. Now, as for the macro, where you can get it on World Machine's website as well. I think you can go to community, and you got a bunch of macros right here. Yeah, there you go. Coastal overlay. Just double click on, you just click on it and download, and you just follow the instructions to install the macro itself. Alright. Now we got a bunch of outputs here for each nodes. You got an input and an output. In this case, you got an input for the height. The heights are changed by the erosion effect. Then the output is the heights after the erosion. So primary output height field. You bring it into the coastal overlay. The coastal overlay is going to generate the color texture maps. Now, in order to preview this effect, you need to create an extra node. Now this node here is going to help you preview. There you go. It's the overlay. So you're gonna basically, this is gonna output a texture, as you can see, default output bitmap, and you have to overlay the height map and the texture map together to see how it's gonna look in the end. So we're gonna link this here. Overlay input. Then you need to input a height field. It's the height field we're working on, and you click on this one. Lock preview. You can already start seeing some changes here. As you can see, it's texture applied, and you can see on slope angle where some sandy rock here is displayed, and we can obviously tweak these options and change the angles, the slope angles at which the grass is displayed or at which the rock is displayed. Same goes for the water, but in this case we're gonna deactivate the water, since we're gonna bring this inside the engine where the water is basically gonna be rendered inside the engine itself. So you double click on the coastal overlay node. Turn off the water by moving the slider to 0 water height. There you go, disappears. Here you can see that you can even add a light map. So if you're working, depending on the engine you're working on, let's say you're working on a UDK. UDK, usually people work with the UDK and render out light maps for the engine itself. It's probably nice to render out a light map in World Machine, because sometimes you can get some better details, because it actually renders ambient occlusion as well for the terrain. So just for the sake of it, we're gonna take a look at it and build the terrain and see how it looks. Now, as you can see, every time I add a node, it shows how much time it takes to calculate. So imagine some terrains have a network of over 50 nodes of effects, and it does take a lot of time to calculate. Alright. Now it's starting to look nicely detailed, but still lots of stuff to work on. I mean, just for the sake of the tutorial, we can already stop here. I mean, I showed you the basics, how to use World Machine. Later on, it all comes up to you to experiment with different effects and different nodes. But let's make it look a bit more interesting. Let's say we want to add some terraces. We can do that really easily. You just go to filter and open up the terrace node. We're gonna add a terrace between the original height map that we imported from Mudbox and the erosion node effects. So instead of directly going to the erosion, we're gonna make it go to the terrace effect and go to the erosion. As you can see, it already starts to change here. It's starting to get terraced. Obviously, like every node, you can just double click and tweak the options here. We got a bunch of this is the number of terraces you can see here in the preview window. The terrace shape as well, you can tweak it out. Terrain layering, obviously, and then you get a bunch of options here: smooth, simple, sharp. Maybe smooth's gonna be it's gonna work maybe better for this case, but yeah, hard as well could give us some nice edge highlights and details, and maybe some more volume. Number of terraces. Let's see. Let's see. Always good to just render around and see how it looks. Okay, seems like the smooth terrace doesn't add much to the terrain. Maybe you could try out again with the hard one. Or let's see. Oh yeah, there's a bunch here of presets that could be interesting to try out and maybe tweak. You got a bunch here. Let's see, plateau maybe. It's probably gonna have lots of layering in the terrain. But it's always interesting to see how it's gonna look. Plateau seems to look nice. It's a bit too hard edged. I mean, we can always add a node and tell where the terrace effect is gonna take place. Let's say I want it to take place only here on this part here where the cliffs are. I don't need it to be terraced here since here's gonna be the beach anyways. Okay, so all we need to do is go back to our node workplace and add a layout generator. Alright, there it should be here. Alright, so we're gonna create a mask. So layer generator is basically is a node where you'll be able to paint a mask, which is going to be some sort of texture in black and white values, where white's gonna tell where the terrace effect's gonna apply, and black is gonna tell where there shouldn't be any terrace effects. Okay. So shape mask, primary output help field, and mask input. You can basically understand where it's gonna link together. Alright, so it's linked here. Now we double click. Now zoom out a bit. There we go. You can see here our terrain from the top view. And let's say we're gonna paint a circle maybe. Simply paint a circle. There you go. You can already see that you don't have a lot of terrain terraced here. Now right click and start moving the shape. You can tweak the radius of the effect here. Alright, you can see here it's localized terrace effect just right here, and you don't have any terrace anywhere else. Obviously you got some glitches here due to the software trying to update while changing some settings at the same time. So we can tweak the shape. Turn down a bit the fall off. Obviously, maybe we can try out with another shape. I just deleted this circle here. I pressed on the delete key and try it with the line tool. So the line tool, all you gotta do is just go ahead, pit it out like this. There we go. And then right click, and what you could do is edit check properties and tweak the fall off because it's still affecting a lot of area here. So the fall off distance of 500 meters should be fine enough. I mean, because we can see here the size of the terrain isn't that big anyways. And then you can change the curve of the fall off. You can experiment with different curves and maybe you can achieve some interesting effects. I'm liking this one a bit. Alright. Let's tweak default height value. I mean, right now we can already see how it looks in a 3D preview window. Just build the terrain. Okay. Obviously you're getting some weird shapes due to the fall off of the line that I used on the layout generator. What we could do, we can still tweak it out a bit more. Probably try to tweak out the opacity shrink, because that's basically the shrink of the terrace effect. There we go. No, that's too small. Yeah, you can see it is a bit difficult to work with. It does take some time and you get a bit of delay every time you change the value. So you need to be very patient with this software. But still you can achieve some very interesting terrains and landscapes. You can maybe tweak a bit the curve itself. There we go. I think it's looking nice. So we'll render this out and see how it looks. And later on we'll probably want to tweak the erosion effects and where the erosion effects are applied. So I mean right now it's applying to the whole terrain. Alright, I think it's looking pretty nice. Let's start work on the erosion a bit. Or maybe before doing that, we could add some extra detail to the terrain by adding some extra noise, random noise. Um, we can procedurally generate terrains in Wheel Machine. I mean, there's different ways of creating terrains. I'm using Modbox as a way of creating a terrain and World Machine at the same time. But you could as well just use Word Machine to create your terrain, and you won't even need to go through Mudbox. Now you can just use an advanced parallel noise generator node, and you mix them up together. All you gotta do is just take this file input, the first height map, you combine them together, they go to the terrace nodes, then to the erosion effect, then the height map will go through a coastal overlay macro. That's the one that will generate the texture map, and then here you can just preview your texture map. Alright, in order to do that, to mix these together, just like in Photoshop when you overlay two textures together, you need to bring in a combiner node. You got a chooser and a combiner. What we need is a combiner. Alright. Now click to link them together. Alright. Then link it to the terrace. There we go. You can see directly that it's completely changed the terrain itself. That's because we still need to tweak the options in the advanced parallel node. There we go. You got a bunch of options here. You can basically generate a whole terrain just by using this node by itself. So here is the frequency of the noise. I mean, you can get high frequency noise here, to get, depending on which kind of terrain and which kind of resolution you're working on, or large frequency noise. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can see here the size basically of the noise itself, and it's just written. I mean, you can see continent, mountains, hills, and boulders. We got a bunch of presets here as well that you can try out. I mean, it's always good to check it out here as well, or use them as a base, and then you can start tweaking the sliders one by one. Let's just check it out. This one, very fractal. Render this out. Yeah, you can notice that the render time is going up exponentially every time I add a special a node. Obviously, right now we can still tweak the combiner node, the way we blend together the noise node and the height map itself. You got different types of blending modes. Just like in Photoshop, you got multiply and some different names that are internal to the software itself. And it's always good to try out and experiment different effects, see how it looks. I mean, you can even, if you still want to keep some of that original heights you had previously, you can slide it to the left, or if you want to go directly to the noise and see the output of the noise, you just slide it to the right and just tweak this slider every time with different blending modes. I mean, subscriptive gives you different kind of effects as well. Multiply. Let's switch to the 3D preview window, that way you can see it easily. There you go. Yeah, the maximum seems to add some nice noise to terrain, which adds detail. So this is the original one. Once we add some to blending, it looks like a bit like this. I like using the power one as well. The root detail as well looks nice. Detail adds some oh yeah. Just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to lower a bit the resolution to 512 to 512 and render out a preview version of the terrain. can start tweaking the advanced Berlin and see if we can get some high frequency noise inside into the terrain itself. Let's see how it looks like this. A bit more. No, that's too much. Let's see. See how it's starting to look interesting. Alright. I'm pretty happy with the result here, I guess. Okay, so first of all now we need to set up the coastal overlay to output. You won't have only one output, because right now the only output we have from the coastal overlay is only the color map, the one we're seeing right here, and it has a light map applied to it. In some cases, like in the CryEngine, you don't really need the light map, you only need the color map and maybe some ambient occlusion detail over here. So what we're gonna do is actually edit the macro itself. All you gotta do is just double click, enter macro, and try to examine how it's built. I mean, right now you just deactivate log preview, that way you can see what each node is rendering. Obviously this is the light map output. If you want to output a light map as a bitmap, you can just, let's see, this inverted version, and this one is a version with the ambient occlusion. So it's probably more interesting to get one with the ambient occlusion baked into it. So let's double click on the output, because you can obviously see it comes from the left, starts from the left, and and ends to the right. And this is the output, the bitmap output that you will find right here. So let's enter back. So you just double click on this and add a new port and name it lightmap underscore AO, because it has some ambient occlusion information into it. And the settings, depending, let's see, it depends, all depends what kind of output we're having over here, and it's gonna be a height field. So settings, height field default, okay, because it could as well be a bitmap. I never use text or any, but bitmap is right. Okay, and we're gonna like this here. Oops, still in bitmap. Setting height map. There we go. No. So we got this output here from this node. It's going directly to the output from the macro. So in the end, when we go to the top level here, you'll see an extra output. That will be our light map ambient occlusion. Let's go back inside. Right now what we're gonna do is add a slot, an output for the color information. I think we didn't tweak the color coverage. We can do it before going any further first. I mean, we can always find some extra options that might look nice. Let's see. Overlay view, log preview, and double click on your coastal overlay nodes, and you can tweak your slope angle for each material you're going to be using. Obviously, since we're going to be having a beach around this place here, let's add a bit of height. That way it's going to look nice in the engine. The sun having, I'm not sure, since we're going to bring this into the CryEngine, I don't think we're going to really need that. But like I said before, depending on which engine you're going to use it, or what kind of usage you're reserving for terrain, you know how to create a light map output here. We're going to create one for the ambient occlusion. So go to the output node, add new port, ambient occlusion, settings, height field. All right. Create one for the color map as well. For the color map, it's going to be a bitmap since it has color information. Okay. So now all we gotta do is link these to the proper nodes and give the effect that we're looking for. So we turn off lock preview, and there you go. That way we can just select. As you can see, we got a light map here. And we got an ambient occlusion. It's linked to the light map. The light map is combined. The light map and the ambient occlusion are combined into this node here. They're blended together. So I got my ambient occlusion. All I gotta do is output this to my ambient occlusion slot. Now what I'm gonna be looking for is the color information. So I need to find this. Let's see. It's probably around, around this place here. Yeah, this could be used as a texture mask, for example, if you're planning to use Photoshop to tweak your textures. Let's see. This has color information applied to it. Combined. There you go. Should be around here somewhere. Or obviously what we could do is just do this manually. So I'm kind of having a hard time to guess where probably the shoes are. Oh, there it is. Okay, here it is. We got our color map. Alright. What else we could get? Let's see. It's always good, to plan some of extra texture maps that you could use later on in Photoshop if you want to tweak your texture map and make it look a bit more natural. Maybe a mask texture for one for the sand, one for the rock, because maybe you want to change maybe the color of your rock in Photoshop without having to go into World Machine every time and re-rendering the whole texture. So I mean, you could obviously change the color of your sand, the color of the grass here directly, but it's probably better to just do it in Photoshop. So what we're gonna do is output this as a texture. This you can obviously see if we invert this, it's gonna be the one for the beach, the sand beach. This one could be used for grass and rock at the same time, because obviously black is gonna be rock, white is gonna be grass. So create these extra output slots. So grass / or not glass _ rock mask settings as a height field, okay, and add one for sand beach. Okay. Now this is gonna be output. We're gonna link this to the sand beach one, and this one's gonna be for the grass rock mask. There we go. Now let's go to the top level. Yeah, all this time we've been working inside one node, so it can get really complex if you want to get some desired effects. Okay, so these ones we'll finish by linking these to the outputs files later on. Let's see what we could do. What else we could do? Let's render this out just in case and see how it's gonna look like. Yeah, could probably tweak the castle overlay a bit. it's gonna be cliff slope. I want it to be a bit more grassy. Okay, let's render this out. Get some nice grass patches over here and there. Can just to preview the water level, maybe we could just turn on the water and see what it's gonna look like later on in the engine itself. So obviously the water is gonna be all the way to the horizon in the engine. Okay. Alright. I think it should be fine for color coverage. What we could add now is the erosion flow effects. Obviously, the output for these erosion effects is going to come from here, from the erosion node itself. So what we're going to do is combine this color map here, the cluster overlay node, the erosion flows. You got a flow map, wear map, the position map, and if you want to preview how it's going to look like, what we're going to do is, let's see, create an output file, hide output, and link them together. There we go. This is the kind of texture that I'm going to get from the flow map node. So this could be interesting if you blend them together with a color map, and you can get some really interesting effects, just like I have in this terrain. When I zoom out, you can obviously notice the flows of the terrain. Alright. So I'm gonna delete this thing here, or actually let's check out what the other ones can offer. These are basically wear maps. We can look at it in on the terrain when we build it up with. These are the position maps, basically where the mud is gonna be, where the level of terrain is at its lowest. We can blend all these together and have some interesting effects. And it's probably better if we blend these together in Photoshop, because we have some better control and we won't need to build the terrain every time we do some changes. Alright, so now we're gonna start setting up Whale Machine to export all these texture maps that we will need, that we will use in Photoshop for making the whole texture. Alright, go to output and create, let's see, for the light map AO texture file, I'll need a height field output. So what we'll need is a height field output. It's gonna be this one. Alright, I'll link these together. Okay, oops, now you gotta set up this height field output node. You gotta tell it where it's gonna export your image file and in which format which format you're going to use. So right now, since this is ambient occlusion height field, we can just save it as a 8-bit texture file and as a TGA file. You just set up the output. This time it's still gonna be in our tutorial folder, textures. Save it as terrain light map AO. Okay. Maybe it's probably best to save the file every time the terrain is built. That way you won't have every time to go manually and right click on every node and click on write output to disk, because we're gonna have a bunch of maps to export. Now copy these nodes, because just Control C, Control V, and link this one to the ambient occlusion slot. double click on this one. I'm gonna rename this one ambient occlusion. Save. Same here, it's gonna be as a TGA. What else we got? Color map, it's gonna be in a bitmap. Alright, copy. No, this time we gotta create a bitmap output. It will contain color information. So it's gonna be in a BMP format. You just need to set up where it's gonna be saved. Terrain underscore tut color. Save. I'll put an envy bold. Yes, it's checked. Alright. And link them together. Deactivate. Then we can be sure it's probably. There we go. This one. It's for the ambient occlusion. This one is ambient occlusion with light mapping. Okay. What else do we got? We got the texture masks for the grass and sand. So it's gonna be height field, which since it's in a grayscale, just Control C, Control V. This time it's gonna be saved. Here we're dealing with the mask for the rock and sand. Grass, rock, mask. Save. Okay, same here. TGA as well. Alright. Now last thing to export is the sand mask. Let's rename this to sand. Save. Okay. And one last thing we need to output. Yeah, the flow maps. We almost forgot about them. We need them. So it's the same thing here. We need height map outputs, which are in grayscale. So just double click on this one, and this one's gonna be the position map. It's gonna be used as a mask as well. TGA, set the file folder, terrain, deposition, or just type depo mask. Alright. Control C, Control V, copy paste. Same thing here for the flow map. The flow map is probably one of the most important ones, which gives you those nice erosion flows on your terrain. And they're obviously very hard to paint by hand. So I'll just name this one flow mask TGA as well. Save every time. Yeah, you need to check the box to save every time you build your terrain. Alright. Now for the where map, copy paste again. This one is going to be named terrain tut where underscore mask TGA. Okay. And one more thing we need to export is obviously the height map itself. Since the height map has been modified in one machine, since we've applied some erosion node effects and terrace effects, we need to export the new one that comes from world machine. So we need to create another height output just for the height map, the primary height field output. Link them together. name it terrain world machine. So WM, which stands for world machine underscore height map. And this time we're going to save it as a, let's see, I need to remember which file format works great with CryEngine, for instance. It is probably a PGM format. I need to check it out first. Let's go to the terrain, and the terrain file, import height fields. So it supports BMP PGM.raw files. So, and what we need is a 16-bit file, which will show us the will import the heights on the texture map at all levels. You're gonna get a much bigger range of levels for your height fields. So it's probably better to export this as a PGM file from World Machine. So it is over here, and it is in 16-bit. So the naming is done. Alright. Just check out that everything is linked properly. That we're not forgetting anything. What else we could do? We could probably export, or actually never mind. Just keep it the way it is. I mean, we need to start working on the engine. Now all we need to do is change our texture resolution, the output resolution, to the max, which is 2048 by 2048, the resolution we're working on. Press OK. One more thing we need to check. I need to check out my terrain first. One last preview render, that way I can, before, I don't want to keep going back and forward between World Machine and the engine. Just render one last time and see how it looks at 512 by 512. Okay, we probably want to level our terrain. I mean, clamp it. I mean, right now we got some extra height that's kind of being useless. We want this point here to be at 0 height. So let's tweak this up. There are different ways of doing it. You can just probably go to general setup and terrain altitude and try to work with this. Let's see, the way it changes the terrain is basically actually adds altitude to our terrain, and that's not what we want. Let's cancel. So what we're gonna do is actually go back to our nodes, and we're gonna add a clamp node. Clamp, there it is. So we're gonna add, let's see, let's fix this a bit. There we go. I'm gonna put a clamp between terrace and erosion. Since erosion is just a small filter that doesn't modify heavily the terrain, we can just put it here, or just you can put it after the erosion node. It's up to you. Now you can go to the 3D preview window, log the preview on the overlay, and open up the clamp and tweak the values. You can try to find extents, normalize input. It's probably different. So this is the original shape. Okay. I think this should be fine. All we gotta do now is just tweak just a little bit the color generator, the overlay, Custom Overlay Generator. And fix the cliff slope a bit, since we need a bit more grass, right? Or the sand beach height. There we go. All I gotta do here is a bit of grass here. Okay, let's build this up. Alright, we got a few glitches here and there, but it's nothing that bad. I mean, we could still go inside the nodes and add some masks and tweak them again, tweak the erosion effects. Let's see, we can try different erosion effects here. I'm gonna go to channels. See this, how it will look like with this erosion filter set up this way. We get some bugs here. Actually, it's the way I set up the erosion effect. See how this one looks like? Alright, I think we got rid of the problem that we had earlier. And this should work fine for terrain. Alright. Need to keep in mind if it's still perfectly clamped, so you just need to clamp it just a tiny bit. Okay. And to the overlay, custom overlay generator, and fix the beach height. Seems every time we change the values. Yeah, as you can see, it's all about experimenting options in World Machine. That's what you spend a lot of time doing, and I actually like doing this kind of stuff because I'm every time discovering new effects, and once I learn how to do a specific effect, I can use it in the future in a different project or in a different terrain, and it will be much faster in the future. Okay, so now all we gotta do is just render out this terrain at the resolution we're working on, which is 2048 at 2048. Another thing you could do, we could probably, what's good about War Machine, you could probably as well, generate a normal map out of it, and as well use it in UDK. But what we're gonna do later on, we're gonna go back to Modbox, because we're gonna use this hack map, and we're gonna paint some extra detail to make it look nicely, artistic detail. That way we can just break the terrain just a bit, because right now it looks a bit too procedural in my opinion. I don't know what's your opinion, but we can still make it look a bit more interesting. Okay, let's render this out. 2048 by 2048. Okay, everything is checked. Let's save this out just in case it crashes. Sometimes it crashes, but it rarely happens. But just to be safe. Just give it this name, save, and let's render this out. I'm gonna pause the video right here, and we'll be back when the terrain rendering will be done.